Once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will always have a live chat on the first Friday of the month at 8 p.m. So please subscribe, click on the bell, and let's get 1,000 subscribers very soon. Gudde Moien and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Italy was divided after World War II. Italy was the black sheep of the Axis and never lived up to its full potential. At first one might say that there were some points where Italy could have been helpful, but it became clear that Italy without the German assistance would be totally doomed. The Greek campaign failed, the Yugoslav campaign was a disaster, and even Ethiopia was the limit. Could have gone wrong in many ways. The Allies, especially UK, approached Italy from the south and fought upwards, and at the same time Italy had troubles within that escalated in a full-blown civil war. In 1943, the GrandCouncil of Fascism fired Mussolini from his position, and Mussolini tried then to get in touch with the King Victor Emmanuel II, but instead of accepting Mussolini's resignation, the king arrested him. And fast forward, Berlin was not happy, they rescued Mussolini and they set up the puppet state of the Italian Social Republic, which was basically the northern part of Italy. Afterwards, Mussolini was not efficient enough and partisans, antifascists, executed him. The end of the Italian Social Republic is not clear to this day. Let's say that for this scenario, the more communist left-wing partisans gained the upper hand. And this is not far from the truth, because in OTL, Italy had a strong communist party. They were even the opposition leader. Only the Christian Democrats were the bigger party of the two. So, what if Italy was divided after World War II? The first thing we need to have clear is that the South will anyways be democratic, because the Allies directly occupied it, while the north of Italy would have a big chance to turn red. Let's say that the Soviets gave some more support to the communist resistance, as well as the Yugoslav partisans. They would also give some more support to the Italian resistance. And thus, in OTL, there were anyways communist cells organized by the Communist Party to terrorize the fascists and German supporters. So, with that in mind, the cells, they could expand and become even bigger, and also take some type of political function where they would rule over the people, where they would watch over whole villages or even cities. So it would become some type of council, let's say, like a Soviet almost, but only that it would be ruled by the partisans. The civil war in Italy would need to somehow grow stronger in such a way that the communists would accuse the king and also the democratic politicians to be somewhat fascists in disguise, and that they only changed sides because the war went bad for them. So there needs to be some type of discourse where the communists could portray the democratic forces as well as the king as the ones that stabbed Italy, let's say. So it would be an Italian version of the Tolstoy's Legende, but in a very red communist interpretation. Even the referendum that Italy had about the government type wouldn't change much, and nor would the peace treaty change anything. In fact, it would only make things worse. Some fights would start again, and the Allies, who were tired after just 1 or 2 years of the war, they would just not like to see this happening again. The Allies, including the Soviets, they proposed new elections, and the fact that both sides were closed from Italy, because also the Soviets occupied parts of Austria, would make it more likely that this measure would be adopted. However, thanks to the cell methods that were adopted by the communists and the fact that the rest of Italy in the west and in the south were pretty much anti-communist, a clear division would be seen. The south as the west of Italy were pretty much democratic, while the north of Italy voted in majority for communism. The division would happen step by step. The US would be too afraid to see all of Italy being overtaken by the communists. So what happens now next is that even the socialists and the communists would make the fusions, which actually also happened in OTL, so there was a fusion between those parties. So they pressured the democratic forces to take action in a way, because first of all you have this very strong popular communist party, you have the Soviets close in Austria, and you have the US behind you who will say you have to do something about it. So something is going to happen anyways, and thus we would have a tiny proxy war in a way. It would be a continuation of the civil war that already happened during and a bit after the Second World War, and it would continue after 1948. The US and the Soviets would come to an understanding and force the democratic forces and the communists to sign an armistice. So the US would have a potential to, of course, beat the Soviets and the Eastern Bloc, but since it's so much, close from the end of World War II, and also the Soviets didn't have a nuclear bomb, it would be just more convenient for both to come to an agreement like this. So officially what would happen is that both political spectrums, they would claim to control Italy, but at the end, of course, there would be this division that would be heavily influenced by the communist cells that were created, and also mainly the division of geographical areas, lines, rivers, and so on. They would also be a heavy influence for this. The US and the Soviets, they would both be happy with this outcome. So Italy would then now be divided between, where you have the northern part, and also, well, actually more the northeast, where you have Venice, Bologna as well, and many other cities. They would come under a communist rule, while the south and also the west, they would be ruled by democratic forces. The US would rather have a disunited Italy than a strong united communist Italy. Both Italies would be republics. Northern Italy would, however, choose a more fancy name, such as the People's Republic of Italy. What a surprise. The capital could be somewhere like Bologna or Venice, and compared to the rest of Italy, they were in a very, very good shape economically. Italy would still experience the boom of the 50s and 60s, but less so than in OTL. More Italians might immigrate, and some Italians from the south would first go to North Italy, because North Italy would have all the factories at first. North Italy would be ruled by Palmiro Togliatti for some years. The People's Republic of Italy would not be occupied by the Soviets and be heavily influenced by its neighbors, such as Yugoslavia, for instance. The Tito-Stalin split happened around 1948, or some years before the People's Republic of Italy would truly be established, actually. So the leader, Togliatti, and the rest of the leadership, they were still very loyal to the USSR in OTL, despite not being occupied by the Soviets, now in ATL. But since Yugoslavia would be their neighbor, they could allow themselves to play a key role between the Soviets and the Yugoslavs. If both countries needed to somehow talk, they would do it through the People's Republic of Italy. A problem would happen once the Hungarians would rebel in 1956. The People's Republic of Italy supported the Soviet lines, but some key communist figures would disapprove this move of the Soviets, and it could potentially get very violent in the north. The south of Italy would see this as opportunity to sponsor unrest. They would do this through San Marino, as the border in there would be very, very weakly defended. The People's Republic of Italy would choose the same as the Soviets and try to crush at first the rebellions. Many communists would become disillusioned, some would take refuge in other countries like Switzerland, San Marino, and some would even go to the class enemy South Italy, if they were allowed to do so. The economy would suffer a lot, and the advantages that they had would run their end within some more years, and the leadership of the People's Republic of Italy would recognize that in the long run something needed to change. Some hardcore communists would still like to have the Soviets intervene, but geographically it would just be impossible. The People's Republic of Italy would give the following choice to many people: or to go away peacefully or participate in the institutions peacefully. Deals would be achieved in San Marino between South and North Italy, where they would exchange perhaps experts, where they would also talk about the refugees, where they would talk about visas and so on. And the North at the end would be left drained by experts, so they would not have as many experts as the South. Money would also come a little bit to an end, and in many areas they would rely on Soviet assistance and even maybe get Yugoslav assistance in one way or another. In the following years, the Communist Party would create an Italian way of socialism. However, with Nikita Khrushchev as leader, this would not alienate them from Moscow. The Soviets would on multiple occasions offer them to become a member of the Warsaw Pact, but it would be very, very complicated to actually be a member in there. Key moments in Italian history would have a more left-wing tone or have some alternative left-wing interpretation, and the Spartacus rebellion could, for instance, be celebrated by the communist rulers as something like a first rebellion against the elite, and as a way to see that the working class and at that time the slaves would somehow give path to communism in one way or another. This means that someone like Enrico Berlinguer or Berlinguer would have a good opportunity to take power in the People's Republic of Italy. And he would get through with his positions and ideas. He would be still open to more conservative components of society and even to church figureheads, similar to Poland, for instance, during communist times. But still, he would talk to people like Erich Honecker or Tito, for instance, or Ceausescu. Due to the fact that terrorism wouldn't exist or just be different, Berlinguer, as well as all of the Communist Party, would not be seen as protector of terrorists. They would just be the enemy to the other side of the so-called wall or line. A leader like him would have the capacity to bring some people back, in my opinion, that fled the north, and it could also help the north to flourish again in their economy, and it would also help that you would have again a little bit more culture, you would have a small revival in every component of society, and there would be some more liberties at the end. If Berlinguer would still have the same positions as in OGL, a major break would come at around 1980. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan would be the breaking point, and so soon after receiving less aid and help from the Soviets, the economy could be somewhat privatized, or the People's Republic of Italy would get help and credits from the South, for instance. So the People's Republic of Italy would not be on par with the South, but the division between them would be much smaller than, let's say, the division between West and East Germany. The successors of Berlinguer were also very moderate, and even if they would rule an independent country such as the People's Republic of Italy, it wouldn't change much of their views and personalities. Soon after, especially with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of Italy and south of Italy, they would unite. The Communist Party would transform in a similar way as the SED from Eastern Germany, and the successor party would become the major left-wing force similar to the Linke in Germany. And I think that very much at the end, this whole chapter of communism and then also before with fascism would still not be very much be treated in Italy in the same way as it is in Germany or in, at least for the communist parties in Poland. So it would be, most communist leaders in there would still hang into power, and most people would not really feel bothered by it because the People's Republic of Italy at the end, they managed to somehow get by and not really be a very poor country at the end. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Althistory.